You're both world-class debaters, even public intellectuals, if I can say that.
Jesus.
Yeah, I know.
Going real hard here.
I know. You both care about the truth. What is your process of arriving at the truth?
I think it's really important everybody will say that they're objective and that they are nonpartisan. I think it's really important to have mental safeguards for bad opinions. So for instance, like a couple things that I'll ask myself is, for a particular debate that I'm having, like, can I argue convincingly both sides of the debate? If I can't, I won't bother having the debate, because I realize that I'm probably too partisanly dug in if I can't even represent like an opposite argument here. Another question that you might ask yourself is like, well, what would it take to convince you out of a certain position? If you feel very strongly that, Medicare for all is a good system by which to run the United States healthcare, and somebody says, well, what would it take you to convince you otherwise? If you can't even fathom, like, well, what would it take to convince me otherwise? You're probably too dug into a position. So I think if you go through life saying like, well, I try my best to be unbiased, rather than saying I try my best to be aware of my biases, because the latter is more realistic and the former is literally impossible unless you're a computer. So I think having like actual mental practices that you engage in to try to counter some of the biases that you have is more important than trying to pretend that you're free of all biases and then consuming all your media from one source. Yeah.
Ben?
I agree with a lot of that. I think that the easiest practical guide is read a bunch of different things from a bunch of different sources, and where they cross is probably the set of facts. And then everything else is extrapolated opinion from different premises. That's sort of the short story. So read the New York Times and Breitbart, and they're going to disagree on a lot. But if the core of the story,
and the Daily Wire,
certainly read the Daily Wire. If you read the Daily Wire and you read the Washington Post, and there's a nexus of the same thing, then you can pretty well guarantee that at least, if we're all blind men feeling the elephant, at least if we're all feeling the trunk, we know that there's a trunk there, right? You may not know what the elephant is.
And if you're feeling frisky, then watch Destiny as well.
Thanks.
You've talked about, having a conversation, debating Ben for a long time. What is your favorite thing about Ben Shapiro?
My favorite thing about Ben Shapiro is, at least when we're in election season, he's very critical of his own party. I appreciate that. I feel like Ben generally tries to adhere more to the fact-based arguments than other conservatives that I listen to, which is something that I appreciate, because it's more fun to fight on kind of like the factual grounds of discussing things like foreign policy or whatever, rather than people that only inhabit the idealistic or philosophical grounds because they don't want to learn about any of the facts. So I appreciate that.
Ben, you've gotten a chance to talk to Destiny now. What do you like about the guy?
A lot of the same sorts of things, but it's really fun to see how you do your process. That is a cool thing. And it's a gift to the audience, because honestly, doing what we do, so much of what we do is sitting and reading and being behind closed doors and educating yourself and talking with people. But getting to watch you do it in real time is a really cool window into how people think and how people learn. So that's a really neat thing.
Well, gentlemen, this was incredible. It's an honor. Thank you for doing this today.
Hey, thanks a lot.
Yeah, thanks for having me.